Sesame Street to feature cross-dressing LGBT star Billy Porter. Once again, public TV flips families the great big bird. I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and don't tickle me, Elmo. This is the Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on this kind of craziness, impacting K-12 classrooms, college campuses, and apparently public TV around the world. Today, we're discussing a Muslim father in the UK who is risking jail time for keeping his son out of school during transgender lessons. Plus, students in Massachusetts are now able to earn college credit for organizing social justice events. It's the only way Nancy Pelosi got her degree. And Greta Thunberg, yes, good old Greta, has been nominated again for a Nobel Peace Prize. Katie and I have a few thoughts about that. But first, the once revered children's television show Sesame Street is going full-on woke as it welcomes a gay cross-dressing man to entertain millions of young children. And this is not new. We had HIV Elmo back, it was in the 90s, right? We had HIV Elmo. We shouldn't be surprised. I remember being a little kid watching Sesame Street, which came out in 1969, I believe it was. I remember in the early 70s watching it, and I remember being moved politically. I mean, even that early on, it was activism. I mean, they were very concerned about shaping attitudes. Brilliantly done. The Muppets were one of the Muppets are one of the great American innovations, period. But they were used not always to be politically balanced, let's just say. And it's gotten much worse over time. And so now you have this circumstance.
So what Sesame Street has decided to do in its Woke 2020 is in a Facebook post, PBS announced that Sesame Street will feature Billy Porter in all his lovely dresses. He's a homosexual actor known for his ostentatious cross-dressing, and he's going to be on an upcoming episode. And basically, he likes to cross-dress, and that's why everyone thinks he's so woke, and so clearly he needs to be on Sesame Street.
Yeah, that's the point, right? They used to bring artists on, and they bring politicians on. Now, the only reason you're bringing Billy on is because he's trans, right? Or he dresses trans, right? That's the only reason. His only sole nobody knows who this guy is. He has really nothing else to contribute except the fact that he dresses in a trans sort of way, right? And so here's what's happening. Sesame Street now has officially decided that they are not about kids anymore. They're about taking kids and sexualizing them, taking kids and forcing adult content on them. This is nothing that The Count would have done 25 years ago. This is nothing that Grover would have done 25 years ago. This is not what Big Ben and Maria and Ben, this is not what the cats in the barrio would have done 20 years ago. So Sesame Street, you really need to just come out and admit that you are not anymore a kid show. What you are is the metaphorical equivalent of the white windowless van that rolls up to the school parking lot after class when the little kids get out. And you're luring kids into the back of your metaphorical white van with Billy Porter, right? You're sexualizing them. You are treating them in the way that predators, you're grooming them. That's who you are, Sesame Street.
It's the creeper van.
Creeper van.
It's called. And they've already been doing this. It's not like Billy Porter is anything new. Take a look at the new upbeat type of music they put on.
Some girls like to play princess. Some girls like to play ball. They can pretend they're sailing the sea. Girls can play anything at all.
Some boys like to play heroes. Some boys like to play doll. They can pretend they're sharing some tea. Boys can play anything at all.
So whatever you want to play, it's your call. Anyone can play in any kind of way. Any girl, any boy, costume or toy. It's okay to play. Anyone can play. Anyone can play.
You know, I could almost grudgingly allow them in their wokeness to do this if they weren't such hypocrites. No, not everybody is allowed to play. You're lying to these kids. You are absolutely demonstrably lying. You and your entire feminist crew of social justice warriors have already told parents that to let your little girls play princess is a form of a harassment. It's a form of misogyny, right? So I'm not sure everybody gets to play. And would you be okay, Sesame Street, if my 5-year-old son wanted a little blackface on, he wanted to play Michael Jordan? You be okay with that? Would you be okay if my daughter wanted to dress in an obi and be a geisha? No, you wouldn't. So it is highly selective what you're talking about here. You are trying to convince kids of something that you don't even believe is true.
All right, Oscar the Grouch.
In the spirit of Sesame Street, here's what we're going to do. Since Sesame Street has decided they are no longer trying to teach little kids at little kids level, they're trying to use kids for their own warped ideology, we think this is a brand new Freedom Project joint I'm about to drop on you. So gather the kids, give the dog a bone, turn off the phone, Shania Twain, and sit down and listen to this. We've decided that we need a new theme song for Sesame Street to capture the zeitgeist of their new mission, which is not to be children and to get inside children's head and to educate children as children. It's to turn kids into sexual beings. Here is the Sesame Street song. Backup singer, ready?
La 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 la. I'm ready.
Do 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 do. Tranny day, making things oh so gay. On my way to where the queens all meet. Can you tell me how to get to Wokey Woke Street? Boom, roasted.
Okay, so we're going to go from Sesame Street across the pond, where we have a father, Jabbar J. Hussain, who for months now has been keeping his 9-year-old son out of Parkfield Community School in Birmingham, England, because they are teaching LGBT plus equality lessons all the time. And he's now, because he's been keeping his son out of school, he's facing a fine and potentially some jail time, and he's perfectly okay with that. Hussain claims that the school's, it's called the No Outsiders Equality Program, was incompatible with his rights and Muslim faith. Pupils have basically 5 lessons a year that are covering areas including age, disability, gender reassignment, marriage and civil partnership, pregnancy or maternity, race, religion or belief, sex, and sexual orientation. And Mr. Hussain alleged that the lessons posed a safeguarding risk and caused confusion for young pupils about their gender identity, and the decision to prosecute him was unlawful and breached his human rights.
He's right. I
Yeah.
mean, he is absolutely right. And it just goes to show you that the degree to which now the British government is willing to come down on Islamic individuals for daring to buck the LGBTQ revolution shows you where this meets, where the rubber meets the road. He's right. And I would simply say to all our friends in the United Kingdom, listen to this man. I mean, why have none of you decided to stand up this way? Why have none of you, those of you who complain about this, who recognize this is immoral, recognize this is an unjust usurpation of parental rights, why are you not willing to go to jail for your kids? Why are you not willing to protect them that way? And to the moms and dads in America, I say the same thing to you. You are not under threat of jail. What are you willing to do to stop this from happening? And the answer resoundingly seems to be not a whole lot.
And what you're saying is, as Mr. Hussain, he is actually taking action. And back in September, he actually had a protest outside the school where he said, we have no issue if Mr. Moffat, who he's referencing Andrew Moffat, the former assistant head, who's the one who promoted this whole program that's going on. He said, if Mr. Moffat wants to put on a dress or dance around like a ballet dancer or put on a skirt, we have no issue. We have an issue with teaching that nonsense to our kids.
That's right. And you also wonder, too, if more Muslim community gets behind this man, that's a serious thing. I mean, we're already in a situation where you've got Sadiq Khan as the mayor, right? And you've got huge enclaves of Muslim immigrants. In many ways, the British government has bent over backwards to accommodate them. So much so that the native population is actually being restricted in what they can and can't say. And so it would seem to me that this would be an instance already, given the propensity of the British government to be both afraid of and to pander to Muslim communities, this would be a really good chance for Muslims to flex their collective muscle in a very positive way that would benefit a lot of people beyond their own community.
Yeah, and if you paid attention at all to what's happening just across all of Europe and the way the Muslim population has risen over the years, and specifically in London, where you do have Mayor Khan, but we're talking about Birmingham, which isn't near there. I mean, it's close, but not quite. This is happening all across England. And in early 2019, there was actually a giant protest that was being led by a lot of Muslim parents. They had hundreds who were gathered outside. And at that, there were, at the time, 600 pupils who were aged 4 to 11 were actually withdrawn from classes. So we like to think over here in the United States a little bit, well, if Muslim parents are willing to do this, where are the Christian parents when we have these same issues going on? We need to also stand up for our children.
does seem like Western Christianity has completely rejected the idea that there are consequences for being Christians, right? It seems that fat, complacent Western Christianity all throughout Europe and now beginning in America, we've decided that Christianity does not require us to actually have to pay a price for our beliefs anymore, and that's too bad.
If you'd like to, you can pay a price, a pretty penny, less than $300 to take some social justice courses. That's how I'm transitioning this one. So we have students who at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, so you know this is a good one, are asking their students, do you have a passion for social justice? Do you want to make a difference? If so, you get to earn 5 credits for the Anthro 380 Grassroots Community Organizing course. And this course is held each spring because it includes an alternative spring break where you get to learn and work with experienced community organizers. The course focuses on how people in marginalized communities build power to change the policies and structures that affect them, and how people build community and organize across the lines of difference. During our spring break, we learn from and work alongside grassroots organizers working toward social, economic, racial, and environmental justice.
By 2030, if nothing changes, this is going to be what universities are and what middle and high schools are. Already, the push to remove the idea of education as we've known it in the world for thousands of years is so dominant in the schools. The primary existence of our public school system and our universities now is not knowledge and the transmission of knowledge, because that's elitist. It's not preserving our heritage and our history, because that's just white supremacy. It's not teaching kids how to think critically, because that's Western phallologocentrism. The primary ethos now is social justice. And so many of the courses your kids are taking at college now are nothing more than indoctrination centers for social justice, and they're getting credit for it. So where we're going to be by 2030, if this doesn't change, is English departments, history departments, humanities departments are going to go away. You will retain the hard sciences, but those hard sciences will be retained in a very different form. The primary purpose of hard science will not be empirical evidence. It will not be scientific discovery. It will be making science egalitarian, what will replace the humanities. So you'll have a form of science that is really social science, right? It will be hard sciences, biology, chemistry, and physics masquerading as sociology. And for the humanities, you will have one great big program that is nothing more than equity. We can call it equity, right? Instead of the humanities, we'll call it equities. And you will not take disciplinary courses now. Knowledge will not be broken down by discipline between philosophy or English or history. It will be a one great big culture block of courses that teach the same racial, class, and gender courses, that demonize the same traditional values, and white men in particular, heteronormativity. That's already there. The philosophical backbone is already there. What they just haven't gotten quite around to changing the physicality of that yet, but it's coming. That's where we're going to go.
Now, what you just said there was all well and good, but this course is not just looking for people who know the most or who write the most eloquently.
Well, that's the point.
We're looking for people who are ready and open to learning, contributing, and engaging fully in this process of building community and skills with others across challenging and complicated lines of difference.
Right, and intellectual gobbledygook, right? So in other words, it doesn't matter whether you have a single qualification. It doesn't matter how illiterate you are. It doesn't matter how selfish or unaccomplished or malicious you are. Come and join us, and we'll teach you how to be social justice warriors.
And they've said so much in their narrative, the course narrative application. There are 7 questions. They have this out. One of the questions is straight up about their dietary restrictions. But then they have an essay prompt that is from a Facebook post that was by a scholar activist named Kianga Yamata Taylor, who wrote this little rant just a week after Donald Trump's inauguration. And within this long, bitter diatribe, she writes, should the marches have been more multiracial and working class? Yes, but you are not a serious organizer if that's where your answer ends. The issue for the left is, how do we get from where we are today to where we want to be in terms of making our marches blacker, browner, and more working class? And you, as the applicant to this class, needs to write a response to this paragraph and things that she's talking about, considering possible questions of, do you feel like Taylor is speaking to you and or your political community? In other words, are you often critical, internally or externally, of people for not being aware or woke enough?
We are very close to a situation where in the near future, you can join Antifa as a major in college and not spend one foot on campus. You'll be in all the major cities agitating, and you will get actual bonus points and extra credit for how many skulls you crack.
And instead of it being an anthro course, it's an Antifa course. They'll get their entire, and the BLM, Black Lives Matter, will have their own major.
Why not? Exactly.
Why not?
Black Lives Matter, Antifa, the SDS, right? The
they'll get their
Democrat
own.
students. Yeah. And the whole point of it is that you don't have to be on campus. Campus is already woke. Where you need to be is you send us in your selfies of yourself. Look at the cop I just cracked over the head. Can I take a picture of you, poor MAGA hat guy, as you bleed at my feet? That's what's going to be how you get your credit at these places. That sounds outrageous, but this is exactly what they're telling you, these so-called activist scholars, whatever the hell that means.
Well, and if you're an activist scholar, you too can get the Nobel Peace Prize, or at least be nominated for it, like our friend Greta Thunberg, the 17-year-old teenage climate activist. Let's talk about our friend Greta. How do you feel about her?
My God, it makes you really long for the 70s when all the Swedes did was porn. Doesn't it?
ABBA,
I mean,
Dancing Queen.
Or ABBA, right? Either ABBA or porn. That was Sweden, right? Now it's communism and the exportation of Greta Thunberg. And so the Nobel Prize, just like Sesame Street, just like Sesame Street is no longer a kids program, right? It is a way for adults to mold kids in a particular progressive image. So too the Nobel Prize, the Nobel Peace Prize, is not about the Nobel Prize for peace. It has nothing to do with peace. There's not a single thing that Greta Thunberg says or has ever done that's going to make peaceful anything happen. Point in case, our argument, right, that because you're a climate warrior, you care about peace is nonsense. If you want to give out a climate Nobel, do that. Do you know how many deserving people there are in gulags in China who have been beaten nearly to death in Cuba? Do you know how many people there are in the world who have given literally their every last drop of blood to try to bring about greater attention for peaceful causes? You're giving her this nomination not because she's pro-climate, right? She's not because she wants to fix climate change. But now the mask has fallen, and now she's reiterating the same kind of feminist Marxist talking points that you love when you give out Nobel Prizes, right? I mean, in that case, you're not all that different from when you gave it actually to Yasser Arafat, right? Here's a guy who was actually killing people, but giving you Marxist talking points why he should. Or when you gave it to Obama for the great peaceful example of getting elected, right? This is what it is. So please stop calling it the Nobel Prize, Nobel Peace Prize. Call it the Woke Bell Prize, right? Have a separate category just for environmentalist nonsense. But you are doing a disservice to the people who are fighting and dying. And look, most of them aren't white. Of most of the black and brown-skinned people or Asian people who are suffering tyranny every day and fighting it, they're worthy of your attention, and they're not white. So I don't see what the conflict is.
You know what I'm going to say to you.
How dare you?
And with that, how about we actually show a person truly deserving of a Nobel Peace Prize? And in fact, she got two. Let's take a look at Madame Curie.
Of all the female scientists to make contributions to our collective knowledge of the universe, none shone brighter or broke more barriers for women than Madame Marie Curie. Born Maria Skłodowska in 1867 in Warsaw, Poland, Curie grew up in a house of educators. Her father taught math and physics, while her mother ran a boarding school for girls until the birth of Maria. Since women were not allowed to attend universities at that time, Maria served instead as a governess after obtaining her basic education. She continued educating herself, however, focusing specifically on advancing her intense interest in scientific subjects. In 1891, she left Poland for Paris, France, to further her studies in physics, chemistry, and math. At the University of Paris, the Sorbonne, she obtained licentiateships in physics and mathematical sciences, achievements comparable to master's degrees in today's universities. After being denied an academic appointment at Krakow University in Poland because of her gender, Curie settled for a position at the Sorbonne in the School of Physics, eventually becoming head of the department. It was there she met her husband, Pierre, also a professor of physics. The two wed in 1895, Marie wearing a dark blue dress that also doubled as her laboratory clothing. The Curies had two daughters, Irene and Eve, before the tragic death of Pierre in 1906. In over a decade of marriage, the Curies achieved great scientific discoveries working as a team. In 1903, they shared the Nobel Prize in Physics with Henri Becquerel for their joint research on the radiation phenomenon. Marie and Pierre also discovered the elements radium and polonium. Marie chose the name polonium as a way of honoring her homeland of Poland. She eventually produced radium as a pure metal in 1910, garnering her a second Nobel Prize, this in the field of chemistry. In 1914, Curie went on to become director of the Curie Laboratory in the Radium Institute of the University of Paris. During World War I, Curie developed small X-ray units that were used to diagnose injuries near the battlefront. But despite such practical, real-world applications of her science, her passion remained laboratory research. Just 2 decades later, in Savoy, France, Curie died on July 4, 1934, at the age of 66. She died from aplastic anemia, which was caused by her exposure to radiation during her research. Curie's passion for science contributed to her demise, but the study of science continued in the Curie family as daughter Irene followed in her mother's footsteps, eventually winning a Nobel Prize in chemistry with her husband in 1935. Marie Curie was the first person to win 2 Nobel Prizes, is one of just 2 people to win in 2 different fields of study, and is one of just 4 to win multiple Nobels. Madame Curie understood well that perfection was not something to be obtained by mere mortals. Nevertheless, she worked tirelessly to advance the cause of science, observing that one never notices what has been done. One can only see what remains to be done.
Do you feel more educated? You really should. That's going to do it for this week. If you like this episode, please help us out by sharing the Dr. Duke Show. It's the fastest way to reach others with what's happening in education every single day.
And if you are a fan of the show and have a business, consider advertising with us. We will sing for you. Visit freedomproject.com/advertise. That's freedomproject.com/advertise. And we will create a jingle for you. Do for Freedom Project. I'm Dr. Duke. She's Katie. Stay groovy, my friends.